We got ourselves another little bit of a lore dump here from Creative Assembly on the lore of Cathay as it pertains to Total War Warhammer 3. And I think that as we kind of read through this together, we can kind of see this rewriting or at least borrowing some portions of the older lore to make the new lore, the new canon of Total War Warhammer 3 and what would hopefully or soon to become the Warhammer Old World rehash of Warhammer Fantasy coming out from Games Workshop. So in this video today, we're going to do exactly what you think we're going to do. We're going to read through this entire big, massive blog on the lore, but you probably don't want to stick through all of it. So let me just kind of give you some quick bullet points about what happens in this, and then you can decide to stay or leave if you so wish. So essentially this lore blog is going to go through the Monkey King, whose presence was completely unmentioned so far. So a lot of people had questions on where's Wukong or Sun Wukong, where is the Monkey King? We will hear about this in this lore. And basically he takes power, and then the Celestial Dragon Emperor takes the power away from him. So it's kind of very similar to the old lore. In the old lore, the Monkey King took over during a little bit of turmoil within Cathay, and this is reflected here as well. And from when he took over, and this is not reflected in this blog, this part I'm about to say, but when he takes over in the old lore, he actually appoints a Skaven chieftain as his advisor, and he starts trade with the Under Empire. So there's a lot going on in the old lore for the Monkey King. And we're going to cover that tomorrow in a video exclusively on the Monkey King, as well as the Ivory Road, which is another thing that is mentioned in this blog, talking about how the two characters that we're going to be seeing as the legendary Lord characters for Cathay, one rules over the Bastion, which is the more prominent character, the stronger character, the Storm Dragon, and then the Iron Dragon rules over the western portion of Cathay and deals very heavily with the Ivory Road. And we'll talk about both the Ivory Road and the Monkey King in its own video tomorrow. But for the most part, that's what this lore blog is about, discussing the Monkey King, the Ivory Road, and the presence of the Celestial Dragon Emperor and whether or not he's a divine being and how they look at him. And Cathay views him as not this divine mystical being, but as a very real presence within their realm because, well, he's alive versus, say, Sigmar or the dwarf elder gods are no longer alive. So I bet you, just as a random little bit of speculation, if the Celestial Dragon Emperor and Moon Empress were not alive, they would be probably worshipped as divine beings, but they are not worshipped as of the writing of this and their current state in the game. But again, that's everything. That's all you needed to know. If you want to just go ahead and shut the video down, I do not mind. Just please make sure you like, comment, and or subscribe if you haven't. And if you have not yet pre-ordered Total War Warhammer 3, you can do so using the link to my Nexus Store in the description. This way you can help support the channel and you'll get a Steam key directly from the developer. Let's dive in here on the lore of Grand Cathay as given to us by Creative Assembly. And we'll skip through the first part because it's kind of just a little preamble, but you haven't heard of this thing. And we're going to read through all this. And again, it is a little low tech because I just simply have a picture. So we'll be kind of jumping around here and there. And I'll stop to talk about some exposition of other lore things or little cool developments here and there as we read. But let's just kind of jump into this. So Grand Cathay is a massive and incredibly powerful empire situated in the east of the Warhammer world, beyond the Darklands, across the Mountains of Morn, and past the Great Maw, the gaping wound in the land caused by Grand Cathay's Astromasters millennia ago. It covers a landmass larger than the Empire, Bretonia, and many other nations combined. Vast cities pockmark the landscape with huge populations watched over by the ruling dragons, the Celestial Dragon Emperor, his consort the Moon Empress, and their children. So real quick hard stop here. There's a bit of the older lore that talks about the Great Maw. And the Great Maw is essentially there's a meteor that smashes and creates the Great Maw, right? And it's this huge crater that bores through the earth and comes out the other side. And the other side that it comes out is the Maelstrom. So the Great Maw is this idol that is worshipped by the Ogre Kingdoms. And in the old lore, it was supposed, or it was theorized, that the meteor that was brought to the Warhammer world was actually summoned by Cathay's Astromasters. This little sentence right there confirms that. So that's a pretty cool little development, especially as it pertains to the new canon for Cathay. So moving on. To the north lies the Great Bastion, constructed thousands of years past by the Dragon Emperor himself and imbued with much of his magic. A humongous wall that has stood for aeons against the ever-present threat of chaos. In times gone by, and for many millennia, chaos has been the most serious threat to Grand Cathay. Had the Emperor and Moon Empress wished it, sheer force of numbers and powerful magics and artillery could have dominated much of the land of the West. But they have been content to rule and defend their already formidable nation. We'll hear more about how chaos is a bit of a thorn in the side of Cathay. Keep this here so we at least have some visuals to look at. Harmony is the driving force behind Cathayan society. The teachings of the Dragon Emperor are such that everyone must work in concert with themselves and the land for the betterment of all and to find their natural peace. This drives everything, from their magic lores of yin and yang to how the dragons govern their people. Far from tyrants or aloof aristocrats, the dragons act as teachers and wardens for the populace. They see little point in creating an imbalance between mortals and themselves when the ever-present threat of chaos will happily destroy them all. So again, more hints here about harmony and how that possibly leads into the actual campaign or army mechanics of Cathay. Similarly, the dragons are not treated as gods, nor do they demand worship. They are immensely powerful beings, rulers by magical and physical right, rather than mysterious divinity. The iconography of the dragons is commonplace and ever-present throughout the society, but because they are very real, very present, and very powerful rulers, they are treated by the people with the reverence such beings deserve, and speaking ill of them, especially if you are not native to Grand Cathay, is a quick way to get yourself killed. The dragons often move among the people in human form. While still evidently far beyond a commoner, they only transform to their draconic selves when there is need, embracing their heritage to lay waste to a battlefield and fly far above their forces. In war, the harmony of the Cathayan way of life is ever present, their forces acting in concert to lay waste to enemies with devastating precision and calm. Again, more of a hint as to how harmony might fall into the combat mechanics of Cathay. We also get the discussion about the transformative powers of the children of the Dragon Emperor as well as the Dragon Emperor and Moon Empress. So it kind of stands to reason that when we look at a mechanic like we got with the Shadow and the Blade, with Malice Darkblade, that might have been that kind of initial foray into having a unit like that transform. So maybe we see these characters as their actual human or mortal selves on the battlefield, which allows them to maybe use spells from yin or yang or maybe certain abilities, and then giving them the ability to then transform and maybe removing that palette of spell casting and only giving them certain bound abilities, or maybe even both, who knows. We'll kind of see how that works, if they'll even be able to transform on the battlefield, or maybe if bringing them to the battlefield implies that they transform. So we'll again see how that hopefully develops, or we will see how that develops hopefully soon. In Warhammer 3, our focus is on two main areas: Northern Cathay with the Storm Dragon Miao Ying, and the Great Bastion and Western Cathay with the Iron Dragon Zhao Ming and the Ivory Road. The land of the Storm Dragon includes the fortress city of Nangao, never conquered or sacked despite the many wars that have met its borders. Naturally, the Great Bastion dominates much of the landscape, with its massive gates and huge patrols of troops fending off attacks from chaos. The eastern steppes make up the lands beyond, thoroughly infested with chaos of every stripe. Let's do that one. Miao Ying is arguably the most powerful dragon alive, save her mother and father. Bold claim. Immense power and immense responsibility land on her shoulders, and she can seem cold and aloof in comparison to her siblings. The defense of the realm, the future of the Grand Cathay, and much more is quite the burden to bear. So we already get an indication here that these dragons are not normal dragons, right? When we think of dragons in the Western portion, not even of our own history, but of the Warhammer world, we think of some of the stronger dragons that have come out with Anarian, or the one that Emmerich rides, or Malekith's dragon, all those really big prolific dragons. But when they say is arguably the most powerful dragon alive, I think they're trying to say that the Eastern dragons are more powerful, especially Miao Ying is the most powerful dragon. Again, very bold claim, and take that again, please, with a grain of salt. A lot of people kind of jump on those statements of most powerful in the Warhammer lore. Every single codex and Warhammer army book has one character that is arguably the most powerful blank. Tyrion is arguably the most powerful, or the best single combatant in the world, according to the High Elf Army book. Malekith is an amazing combatant, according to the Dark Elf Army book. So, kind of, I think that statement is deliberately colored within the light of Cathayan lore in the ways that it has been in the past with army books. Remember, Andy Hall helps write this lore, and he's the individual who helped write the lore in all the years past. So it has that same overall feel. Moving on. Meanwhile, the Iron Dragon must make do with a less defended, if less chaotic area of the world. The western provinces contain beasts and men of all sorts, coming from further west, as well as the regular incursions of Skaven and ogres from the Warpstone Desert and Mountains of Morn. The creation of the Great Maw still hangs heavy on this area, even as an uneasy peace maintains. Zhao Ming is a natural-born warrior, though less innately skilled than his sister to the north. He is a talented alchemist and shows great preference for the art among his armies, much to the chagrin of those that find the insidious magics worrying for the Empire. His lifelong station so close to the Great Maw and all that warpstone mean many fear his mind is permanently damaged from the exposure, and any eccentricities or erratic behavior he displays is very worrying to his siblings. So pretty cool there that we see that astromancy or being an astronomer, or I'm sorry, alchemy, not astromancy, is somewhat kind of looked down upon. And we know that we get yin and yang, we get some form of astromancy of some way, shape, or form, and then we get alchemy coming into Grand Cathay from the first initial blog post that we read. So maybe alchemy has this kind of nefarious link to it, so we'll see how that maybe develops itself in campaign mechanics, possible future lords, because they do mention a little bit here. Well, we'll keep going, then we'll get into that. One thing I want to quickly point out before we keep reading is the location of Nangao, where we have Miao Ying, and then the talk of the Warpstone Desert. But it does say the Western provinces, so I think we can expect to see Miao Ying start over here on the campaign map, and then her brother probably somewhere around this region, if not in the Warpstone Desert actual. So this little lore blurb gives us a little tease of some possible starting locations for Grand Cathay. But of course, stability and prosperity have not reigned forever and are unlikely to continue without a fight. The history of Grand Cathay is longer than even chaos, originating more than 5,000 years previous when the Celestial Dragon Emperor ruled the land before the coming of the Old Ones. He learned how to take the form of a human to gather the tribes, and when chaos began to sweep the world, he defended his burgeoning empire, eventually constructing the Great Bastion to keep the hordes at bay. It has been attacked on innumerable occasions, damaged, and even sometimes breached, but still the Great Bastion stands as powerful a vanguard against chaos as ever, constantly maintained and garrisoned by massive armies. Only Tzeentch, known to Grand Cathay as Qianqi, has managed to significantly infiltrate the empire, his cults being a common cause of disruption and rebellion within. So these two paragraphs really give us that hint back to the older lore that talks about Qianqi being a very big kind of obtrusive force that creates a huge wedge in Cathayan society, right? Where you have a lot of worshipping of Tzeentch. I think another word for Tzeentch, they've got Qianqi, but another one I think is Lord Xian, or it's a character. I just can't remember off the top of my head right now. But we also get another character, Dianqi, who ends up being very important to this whole Tzeentchian subterfuge into Cathayan society, and it talks about some of the very few times that the Great Bastion has been cracked or even breached. So there is at least a nod to some of the older lore here, and this is going to come in big when we talk about the Monkey King. So let's go down here. So yeah, we'll just read the last three here. Trade is the main reason the Western factions know of Grand Cathay's existence and its primary interaction with them. For outsiders, it is a realm of infinite riches and pleasures unknown, seemingly immune from the endless terrors that prowl the outside world. While this is far from the truth, the absolute economic power of the Ivory Road cannot be disputed, and those that make their living along it are evidence of that. For Grand Cathay, there is plenty to gain from an outside world with technology, trinkets, and beasts that are all foreign to them. The most tumultuous time in Grand Cathay's history. Let's stop. Let's go back to that paragraph because there's a mechanic I want to talk about. So, Ivory Road. We hear about this it's kind of like our equivalent of a Silk Road. In fact, it used to be called the Silk Road in very distant portions of the lore, like third or fourth, maybe even second edition, whichever one it was. And the Ivory Road itself kind of spans from Grand Cathay all the way into the Empire. It goes through Pig Barter, it goes through the Mountains of Morn, it goes through the World's Edge Mountains, and the way that you traverse this is on the Grand Caravan, which is a mile long in the Tamarkan book, at least. So imagine this mechanic for the Ivory Road. Remember with Troy, we had the monster expeditions, and as you sent your units out on these monster expeditions, you deal with 4 or 5 dilemmas. You had to deal with those dilemmas in any way, shape, or form, which then resulted in a final battle for that monster. Well, what if the Ivory Road took that exact mechanic and turned it on its head? Okay, you want to send this caravan out and do some trade. Well, you're going to deal with 4 dilemmas, and basically you're gonna play Total War Oregon Trail. So you send your Grand Caravan out on the Ivory Road. You've got 3 or 4 dilemmas. Maybe you can even decide, okay, I only want this caravan to go to Pig Barter, which is just on the other side of the Mountains of Morn. Okay, it's a shorter, less dilemmas, less chance of big things to happen. Hey, I just want to go to Kislev. Okay, just 3 dilemmas. Oh, you want to go all the way to Altdorf? That's going to be 4 dilemmas. You get a bigger payout or a bigger result, whatever it is. And what you choose along the way kind of colors the result of your journey. Or maybe if you didn't choose this guy to go with it, like you can choose certain agents to join the caravan, or maybe do certain things that allow you to break through certain stuff. Like, hey, if you built the Grand Caravan building, you also need to make this upgrade for it, which allows you to bore through rock. I don't know, I'm making stuff up right now, but I still think that would be a really cool way to do the Ivory Road if they just basically ported over the monster expeditions and had that be a way to generate revenue for Grand Cathay. So moving on, just a little speculation there. The most tumultuous time in Grand Cathay's history came with a combination of invasions from Chaos from the north and the Monkey King from the south, alongside a 4-century disappearance. The Dragon Emperor and the Moon Empress nearly led the empire to ruin. Then, more than any other time, the natural competition between the Emperor's children reached its peak, and Grand Cathay was essentially divided into warring states. This allowed the Monkey King to take power and claim dominion over the empire, an act heinous enough to galvanize the warring siblings into once again putting aside their differences to fight for their father's throne. At the key point, the Emperor and Empress returned and helped to defeat the Monkey King, who fled south. Little is known of him or his fate. Perhaps yet darker days may be on the horizon. Events the world over are conspiring to require the attention of even these isolationists. Chaos amasses beyond the Great Bastion like never before. Rebellion and squabbles between local factions are reaching new heights within the Empire. Whatever machinations the Celestial Dragon Emperor has been planning continue to come to fruition. But to what end? Only he knows. What are you going to do about it? So this second to last paragraph here is pretty huge, right? It basically talks about the history of Cathay as it pertains across to our own history in the Warring States period of China. And it matches that, right? That's what they're trying to say. Hey, yeah, the Emperor's children fighting, that's what created all that turmoil. The Monkey King took power. Well, that's the same thing as the Warring States, whatever. So you get this very similar kind of outcome here. So hopefully in the future, we'll find out more about the Monkey King. He says he fled south, so that gives the possibility of either Ind or Koresh. You could say Nippon, but Nippon is south and east, and it's an island. So I feel like you wouldn't say he fled south for that. Say he fled to Nippon, because it's a pretty prominent location. But this could possibly bring Koresh into the game in a future DLC led by the Monkey King, which would be awesome. You guys know I've been covering the Koresh fan-made project, which is awesome. Please go check them out. But even to jump further into Ind would be an amazing step as well. So you have a lot of different choices to take the Monkey King from here. Could he be coming in a future DLC? Is he some part of Grand Cathay's like actual quest and main campaign quest, and you actually do fight him at the end? We don't know yet, right? But I'm really excited to dive more into the lore as it comes out from Creative Assembly. I really want to figure out how that Harmony mechanic works, how that Ivory Road mechanic works, and if there's going to be more mechanics around the Great Bastion. We still don't know anything about sieges, and that's kind of a lot of the big lore, or not, sorry, not lore, the big mechanics that we're looking to get information on, that they did say it was coming here in September, and we're coming up to the final days here. So hopefully that will be divulged in the next week or two. But as more stuff comes out, guys, I'll definitely be covering it. Unfortunately, we don't have much more to go off of yet. So hopefully in the coming weeks, we'll get more information. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. If you have any questions, some things you want to talk about, I will be putting out a video for both the Ivory Road and Monkey King tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that, and plenty more content to come for Total War Warhammer 3. But as always, have a good one and take care.